very unique cards to review today. Hello everybody and welcome to another card review on my channel. It is your boy Howley. Today we have a bunch of new cards as we approach the end of the reveal season for Scholomance Academy. And as I alluded to in the intro, there is a very cool shaman card to start off with today. We have the Instructor Fireheart, a 3-mana 3/3, a very unique battle cry. Discover a spell that costs 1 or more. If you play it this turn, repeat this effect. This is a very cool card, guys. Theoretically, you could chain this for a bunch in a single turn. Obviously, the fact that it has to be 1 or more mana means you cannot go infinite. I think that's definitely why they designed this card in such a way. You cannot get 0 mana spells with this, and obviously we know that Shaman does have a couple of 0 mana spells as well. But the fact that you can only get 1 mana or more means you can't infinitely chain this in a turn, but you can still chain it quite effectively. Let's say you're at full mana, you play 3 mana for this card, you maybe pick up a 1 mana or 2 mana spell. Play it immediately, you discover another spell, you play it again, maybe you do 2 or 3 spells in a turn. That takes your whole turn, and you get to discover some really nice spells that you may not have had at the start of your deck, of your game. Maybe some situational cards that can help you in the moment. I think this card is very cool. The fact that it's Discover gives you more of a, way to find a specific card that you need. And I think this is a really good card that Shaman would definitely love for the next 2 years. This would fit into some sort of control Shaman for sure. A Highlander Shaman would love to see this card, just providing them more value and being able to pick what card you want on the fly, and obviously picking it depending on the situation you're in the game is very, very important. So I think this card is fantastic. Definitely see play in Highlander Shaman. The question is, will Shaman be good in next expansion? I do think Totem Shaman will see play next expansion. I think they have a lot of good synergy cards, a lot of good support cards that were released couple days ago. This card obviously doesn't really fit into that kind of shell. It doesn't really fit into an aggressive kind of shell either. 3-mana 3/3 body, not too bad, but on the weaker side for a 3-drop. So you can't really play it on 3 effectively. I mean, at worst, it's still just a 3-mana 3/3 discover a spell. You don't get to repeat the effect, but it's still discover a spell. It's still not bad. Maybe this would be playing every shaman deck. I'm not completely sure. I think an aggro shaman may find other cards that are more useful though, to be honest. So because of that, and because I don't think Highlander Shaman is going to be top tier, I'm going to give this card a 6 out of 10. Up next, we have Professor Slate for Hunter. 3-mana 3/4. Your spells are poisonous, and it's a legendary minion. Very cool effect, guys. Obviously got a great stat line, great body. 3-mana 3/4. Historically been very, very good in Hearthstone. You won't mind playing this on turn 3. Decent defensive body that can both face and put pressure on as well. But the effect is very, very interesting. Your spells are poisonous, so any spell that you cast while this is on board will kill a minion from like a deadly shot effect, right? So think about, the one card that really stands out with this is Rapid Fire. 1 mana deal 1, add another Rapid Fire to your hand with Twin Spell. You can basically kill 2 minions for 5 mana and get a 3/4. That is an insane combo. Other notable cards, you could talk about Corrosive Breath possibly, 2 mana deal 3. You could talk about Kill Command, which in a pinch can also kill a minion. But to be honest, in Hunter's a class that doesn't really have a lot of options in terms of like cheap removal or AoE, right? If this card was a mage card or a priest card, it would be absolutely ridiculous because you can pair with stuff like Blizzard, like Breath of the Infinite. Because it's in Hunter specifically, I don't actually think this card is going to be that strong. The card itself in a vacuum is incredibly strong, but just because of the class that it's in, it is quite limited in my opinion. You kind of have to run Rapid Fire and maybe Arcane Shot if you want to play this card successfully in a Hunter deck. And then it comes the issue of, well, what if you draw this card without the other 2 cards? What if you only draw Arcane Shot and not the Professor Slate? Obviously, it's only a legendary, so it's not that consistent. It's not guaranteed that you're always going to draw this card. So there are a couple of limitations as well. So because of all of those reasons, I don't actually see this card being that great in the meta. Although it is a very strong card in a vacuum, as I said, we are analyzing these cards based off how good I think they are going to be next expansion, in the meta of the next expansion, how competitive cards are going to be. And to be honest, guys, I actually don't see this being that competitive. I don't think Highlander Hunter really want to run this card because they'd also have to run some cards alongside it to make this good. So I'm actually going to give this card a 4 out of 10. It might seem like a very weak rating, to be honest, but I think this will be experimented with. But I actually don't think it's going to fit into any deck, guys. I hope I'm wrong because it's a very cool card, but yeah, 4 out of 10 for me. Next up, we have Argent Braggart for Paladin. 2-mana 1/1 epic card. Battle Cry, gain attack and health to match the highest in the battlefield. It's a very interesting card. The way this works is whenever you play this card and trigger its battle cry, it will look at the board and it will pick the highest attack that is available on the board at that moment and the highest health, and it will just copy them. So, for example, if the highest attack on the board is either your opponent has it or you have it, it doesn't matter. This card just picks the highest one. If the highest attack minion at that point is maybe 5 attack, this will become a 5 attack minion, and then it looks at the health. If the highest health is a 6 health, and it doesn't have to be on the same minion, right? If one minion has 5 attack and a different minion has 6 health, this will become a 2 mana 5/6. And this card is really strong. I mean, just think about what I said. 2 mana 5/6. That's really insane. The issue with this card is that there already has to be a board for you to play this. So you're either playing it behind, your opponent has really big minions. You obviously can copy their stats. But the issue with that is, of course, this card doesn't have taunt. This card doesn't have rush. So if you're going to die next turn to their board anyway, playing a big minion doesn't really help you that much in Hearthstone these days. There's so much rush effects and taunt effects right now in the game that, just playing stats doesn't really. I know it's 2 mana, it's a really big tempo swing, but if you're behind on board, which is kind of when you can only play this card, you're kind of screwed. And the other way you can play this card is if you're ahead on board, right? Let's say you have a massive board, some really beefy minions with high stats. You can play this card to solidify your board and to win the board more efficiently, but then it's like a win more card, right? It doesn't really help you that much. You're not really able to play this on turn 2. I mean, you can maybe, the stats won't be that relevant though. You might copy like a 2 attack, maybe you'll copy a 3 attack and copy like a 2 health or something. So it still could be like a 2 mana 3, 2 mana 3, 4, which is still pretty decent stats, I guess. Maybe you don't want to be too greedy with this card. Ultimately, I think this card is pretty interesting, but it's a bit restricted in what it can do, just because you can only, as I said, play it either you're behind or really ahead for massive tempo swing. And maybe Paladin, especially pure Paladin, will find use for this card, even if it's just copying maybe 3 or 4 stats. Maybe if you get 3/4 for 2 mana or like a 4/4, that will just be good enough for pure Paladin, to be honest. So yeah, for those reasons, and for the fact that you can play Libram of Wisdom on cast to buff their attack and health, beyond what they should be at that mana possibly, you can play this card for quite large tempo swings in the mid game with something like Pure Paladin. So I think it's actually a pretty decent card. I'm not completely sure if we'll see playing Pure Paladin. Pure Paladin obviously getting some great tools that we saw in the last couple of days. If you haven't checked out my videos, definitely go check them out. There are so many insane cards that have been revealed in the last couple of days. Is this one of them? I'm not really sure, guys. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. I want to rate it higher, but I'm just not convinced as playing Pure Paladin. And I don't really see another Paladin deck that will... It's just too situational, I think. I think it's just too situational. Even though the stats are very huge and you do get a massive swing turn, you don't get rush or taunt, so it doesn't really impact the board that much. A very interesting card coming up next, guys, in the Educated Elec. And can I just say that this is one of the cutest arts that we've seen for this expansion. It's a little elephant reading books. And it is also a 3 mana 3/4. Whenever a spell is played, this minion remembers it. Obviously, be doing a lot of studying in the library. And the death rattle is it shuffles all those spells into your deck. So, of course, the same with our previous 3-drop that we saw for Hunter. This is a good stat line. It's, again, a 3 mana 3/4, which is, key-based stat line, it seems, for Hearthstone these days for a 3-drop. And it's pretty decent. I mean, once again, you don't mind playing this on turn 3. Especially because if your opponent does commit spells to remove this, you're actually going to get them shuffled into your deck. So this is very good in some rolly deck. Maybe a grindy matchup where fatigue is actually an issue. Playing this card and pairing with a bunch of spells, because it also remembers your spells and your opponent's spells as well. It's not just limited to your spells. So playing this, in the late game to combo with some spells that you want back into your hand, maybe some Leap Hopes, for example, maybe some more removal, some more buff cards or some stuff like that. Any spell will be remembered by this and then will shuffle back into your deck so you can get more value in the future. Obviously great for a control deck. But it's also not bad for maybe a mid-range tempo deck, just because of the stat line once again is pretty decent. 3 mana 3/4. And if you do play it, you're going to get some copies of your opponent's spells. Yes, maybe sometimes it's not going to be that good for your deck, right? Normally you don't want to be playing your opponent's stuff, just because it doesn't synergize with your game plan. But, if they play something like Eviscerate to kill this, maybe a Frostbolt somewhere, it doesn't have to be targeted on this minion specifically either, so this card's pretty well-rounded in general. And it's a really cool design as well. But I think the fact that it shuffles these spells into your deck and not into your hand is kind of a limitation for this card. You don't get the immediate effect of those spells. And obviously if you did, it would be pretty broken, to be honest. But because it's kind of a slow card, it's got decent stats, but it's not really doing much else. It does have the Beast tag, so maybe some sort of Beast deck will make use of this if some sort of mid-range Hunter does come into the forefront. I think this will be good just because it's a 3 mana Beast. But for the effect itself, it's definitely an upside in most cases. Sometimes your opponent can throw away a bunch of shitty spells for you. Then you're going to, basically make your deck worse by shuffling them in. That can happen occasionally if your opponent wants to play around this card. But ultimately, I think, you're just going to get some upside with this card whenever you play it. It can be pretty much fit into most decks. But doesn't mean it wants to be played in most decks. Maybe most decks will have better use for different cards that actually, go towards their game plan a little bit more effectively than something like Educated Elix. So for that reason, I don't really see this card being too great, especially because I don't really think there is a specific deck that needs this card. It's not really like a combo specific card. It's just kind of like a little bit of a bonus for decks. But I think they probably want to play something else most of the time, just because it's a little bit more awkward compared to some things that actually go towards their game plan. So for those reasons, guys, I'm actually going to give this a 5 out of 10. It's a shame because it is incredibly cute. Next up, we have Speaker Gidra for Druid and Shaman, a dual class legendary. For Druid and Shaman, it is 3 mana, it is a 1/4, and it has Rush and Wind Fury. Spell Burst, gain attack and health equal to the spell's cost. This card is pretty sick. Obviously, initially it's pretty bad. It's a 3 mana 1/4 Rush Wind Fury. Very, very bad because the one attack isn't really anything. However, if you do trigger its Spell Burst, and I feel like you kind of need to with this card, you're not really going to do things on turn 3. You kind of have to pair this with a spell. But even if it's a cheap spell, something like 2 mana or 3 mana, that's not bad, right? You're going to get something maybe like a 3/6 Rush Wind Fury or a 4/7 Rush Wind Fury, respectively for 2 mana and 3 mana spells. And that's not too bad in the mid game, right? Turn 5, turn 6. You don't mind playing that. You can clear a board possibly right on your side as well. And you get the effect of the spell that you're casting. So it is really not bad at all. It basically turns any value spell that you have in Shaman or Druid into a buff onto the well. Only once though. So it's pretty good. It can be a board clear. In the late game, obviously, you compare this with a 7 mana spell at maximum. Something like Overflow, for example, is going to be pretty decent with the card in Druid. You know, that's maybe not so much for Shaman. You think about stuff like Earthquake and they also clear your own board. So because Spell Burst triggers after the spell has been casted, if you play something like Earthquake, this means you're going to die. So maybe it doesn't work so well for Shaman. I can see Druid make use of this stuff like Nourish, stuff like Hidden Oasis. Obviously, Overflow, as I mentioned previously. Going to be really good with this card, right? Getting an 8, what would it be if you cast an 8/11 Rush, I believe, if you cast a 7 mana spell. An 8/11 Rush Wind Fury on turn 10, and you get like a bunch of card draws. It's kind of like a mini Ultimate Infestation, right? It's like potentially even better as well in some cases, depending on what kind of threats they have. That can pretty much do a board clear. That can kill 2 massive minions on the opponent's side, or create a massive threat for you as well. So this is a really versatile card. Again, though, once again, the issue with most of these cards that I'm looking at is what deck do they really go into? And honestly, I'm not super sure. Druid right now, most of the time, is going to be a Spell Druid, maybe Quest Druid and come back in. And as I said, it does work well with Nourish and Hidden Oasis, and those cards are used in Quest Druid, obviously. So maybe this is a Quest Druid card. Do I think Quest Druid is that great? Not super sure. They haven't got a ton of support in this expansion, so yeah, I'm not really sure. That's probably going to be a tier 3 deck, to be honest. And if we look at Shaman, I mean, yeah, I'm sure higher in the Shaman would be pretty happy with this card, but there's not really like a really expensive 7 mana or 6 mana spell that this can pair with. So sometimes you're going to be playing with something like Farsight or, you know, stuff like that, like maybe like a Serpentine Portal, for example. And that's, to be honest, still not bad, right? As I said, that's a 3 mana 4/7 Rush Wind Fury, and you get the effect of the spell. That's not too bad. So maybe because of that, it's just good enough to play for Shaman. But once again, there's not really a specific Shaman deck that really wants to use this. Not really like a big spell Shaman deck. So this deck, this card, although is really, really good and strong in a vacuum, and that's, you know, seems to be the case with a lot of these cards, that they're really strong in a vacuum. But I just don't really see it working out in the meta that we're going to come up with for the next expansion. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that. Maybe this becomes meta breaking. But for now, I'm not really sure about that. I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. Alright guys, next up is we have a Mage and Rogue dual class spell. 4 mana Potion of Illusion. An epic card that reads, add 1/1 copies of your minions to your hand. They cost 1. Very interesting card, guys. This can actually open the door for a lot of combo opportunities for both of these classes. First thing that jumps to mind is make use of the new legendary for Mage, Mozaki, which is the 5 mana card that gains spell damage every time you spell. A possible combo with this card is that you play the Mozaki, you play Potion of Illusion, get a 1 mana Mozaki in hand, and then next turn you can pop off with the combo. Play Mozaki, maybe play like a Faceless, or maybe just play like 2 Sorcerer Apprentices and go off with a bunch of spells and Mana Cyclone and stuff like that. That could be a possible play. That could be a possible deck in the next expansion. That would be pretty cool too, but the issue with that, it is quite inconsistent. You're going to need a lot of combo pieces still, even though this card does make it a little bit easier. And beyond that, it's just going to be a good value card in Mage. Think about high-end Mage. There's a lot of cards that you do want more copies of. Think about, you know, Malagos, the 5 mana Malagos, maybe like Reno, maybe like a Barista Lynchen, any kind of sort of Battlecry card. It's going to be great to get another copy of 1 mana in your hand. Maybe sometimes they stick on board. You drop a Potion of Illusion onto the board, you get them back into your hand, you get more value, grind your opponent out more easily. It's something that high-end Mage, I think, would love. To have this card, and also just to discover this card as well. The fact that it's going to be in the pool of spells, stuff like Arcane Breath and Magic Trick. Well, not really Magic Trick, obviously, because not under 3 mana, but yeah, like Arcane Breath can definitely discover this, and different spells as well. It could be a good card, utility card for Mage. And for Rogue, it can still do similar things. I think it's less good for sure, just because Rogue has less impact for like the big minions that they want to discount. But maybe you want to get some extra Edwins, maybe you want to get some extra Lackeys, or like a High Sparran, or like a Miscreant, Pressing Adventurer, potentially in Rogue. It's a little bit too expensive though for Rogue, honestly. I think 4 mana. They want to be doing other things in those turns, in those late game situations, either killing the opponent or generating more value. A little bit too expensive for Rogue, I feel like. So it's definitely more of a Mage card in my opinion. Has the potential to create some combo deck in Mage, maybe even in Rogue as well, that I'm just not thinking of. Maybe some sort of Malagos combination. I don't really know. But it's a pretty decent card. I think it will play. Probably a little bit in Mage. Maybe not so much in Rogue as of now, but who knows what the future matches are going to hold. So right now I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. It's a decent card. It's not game breaking. It's not fantastic. It might not see a home everywhere, but it's pretty good utility if you get it. And if you discover it, you're not going to be too upset. Up next, we have Brain Freeze for Mage and Rogue once again. Almost said Shaman there. Another Mage and Rogue dual class card. A 1 mana freeze a minion combo, also deal 3 damage to it. Pretty interesting. The first kind of major point of this card is that it allows Rogue to freeze a minion, which is something that never really happened before outside of stuff like Shadow Weaver. And now it gives Rogue ability to freeze a minion for very cheap, something that, obviously Mage is used to doing, which can open up some possibilities for some sort of aggro or tempo Rogue that just wants to stall out, and kind of ignore minions as they push more damage to face. So that could be pretty decent. 1 mana freeze a minion is actually not too bad. And if you do get the combo off, it's just kind of like a Holy Smite on top of that as well. So pretty strong. Not too bad at all. And yeah, it might see play. I'm not sure if it'll see play immediately in deck list. I think once again it's a card that you don't mind getting a copy of, of Magic Trick or Arcane Breath or discovering. Do something like Ethereal Lackey for Rogue. I don't think you mind getting this card. I think it's pretty good utility. The combo isn't too hard to activate for Rogue, especially. Maybe a little bit harder for Mage. But if they do want to play like a cheap spell Mage deck, that's pretty decent, right? Maybe you want to play a Mazaki, and play a lot of spells in one turn. I mean, it's a 1 mana spell. You probably play this card. You can also have the combo effect to deal 3 damage, so that can clean out some boards. It's not bad, right? 1 mana, deal 3, Holy Smite. That can also freeze a minion if it doesn't kill it with the 3 damage, so not too bad. I think the combo is not too hard to activate. And yeah, I think both classes can make use of this card pretty effectively. Will it go into the current deck list that we see for Mage and Rogue? I'm not super sure about that. I think Hind the Mage doesn't really need a card like this, especially because they already have Ray of Frost, which is better. I know this can deal 3 damage, but they have Frost Balls. They have other ways to do that, and they don't really care about it, I don't think. So this might not really see play in Hind the Mage. And in Rogue, I mean, maybe you'll see play. This is more of a control card, though, rather than an aggressive card, and I see Rogue going into an aggressive sort of playstyle in the next expansion. So honestly, this card might not see play once again. It's kind of similar to the last card that we looked at. Then once again, you don't mind getting off a Discover, but you might not run into your deck. You might not run it in your deck specifically. So because of that, I'm actually going to give this once again a 5 out of 10. Alright guys, next up we have the Paladin Priest Legendary. We've already seen some really strong Paladin Priest class cards last episode. Now we have a pretty interesting Legendary to kind of go along with that as well. It is a 4 mana 3/6, a very good stat line, very defensive stat line. And it has Spell Burst. Cast a spell from your deck. Targets this if possible, the High Abyss Allura. Very interesting card. So initially, of course, high health, low attack. Very good for Priest, obviously, to make use of a lot of those buffs. And pretty decent for Paladin as well. Paladin, a class that also now has a lot of buffs with the whole Libram package and Hand of Adal and etc. stuff like that. Now, obviously, when you cast a spell, so after you play this minion, after you cast a spell, it's going to cast something from your deck randomly. And if it is a buff spell, it will target this. So, pretty interesting. Pretty much you just get a free buff from your hand. Maybe you pick up a Libram of Hope and you're going to high roll and get a free 8/8 as well. Maybe you just pick up something like Libram of Wisdom, though. It's going to be a +1/+1. Either way, you're going to get some upside with this card after you play a spell. I think the effect is not too difficult to trigger. You can play any sort of spell with this card. So, even if it's like 1 mana spell, play this on turn 5 and you curve it to something on turn... Sorry, play this on turn 4, curve it to something on turn 5. Or you play it on the same turn. Either way, you're going to get some sort of spell from your deck pulled out. And, I mean, technically, they could have some negative effects with this card as well. Maybe you pull some sort of, if you play, like, Subdue, maybe you'll cast that, and it says targets this if possible. So, if it's a card that kind of, you have to target your enemy minions, and it can also target your own minions, it can still target this minion and possibly have a effect. It can make it into a 1/1, for example, right? If it's, like, priest, maybe he'll pull like a Shadow Word Pain, and he'll just kill this minion straight up. So there's a bit of a deck building restriction, I suppose. Not too many of those cards are honestly in Paladin and Priest that have negative effects towards your own board randomly, so most of the time you get a pretty positive effect. This can also work pretty well in something like Mass Resurrection Priest, Res Priest. Obviously, if you play this card and you play a spell and it pulls a Mass Resurrection from your deck, you're laughing, right? That's absolutely insane. Issue is then, obviously, you have to play this 4-mana 3/6, which is not something you want to resurrect. And Resurrect Priest is not really too good right now, so I honestly see this as more of a Paladin card than a Priest card. Another good card for Leap Paladin. Maybe play this on turn 4, you play like a 0-mana Leap with Wisdom on it. Sometimes you hire on hit Leap with Hope, and you're laughing, you're really happy about that. Sometimes you hit the Luminance card that we saw a couple days ago, and you get Divine Shield on this, and you summon another copy of it that has Spell Burst again, and then you play it again. And sometimes you get something like Hand of Adal, but you're still not too worried about that because, you know, you get a card draw, you get a little buff on it. It's not too bad, right? It's not game breaking, it's not going to be OP, but it's just not a bad minion to play, especially in Paladin. For Priest, I'm not really sure what kind of Priest really wants to run this. Maybe Galakron Priest, but you don't really want to be putting spells out of your net. You kind of want to have control about what to cast and when to cast those spells. This is definitely more of a Paladin card, in my opinion. I think it's a pretty decent Paladin card. I think this will see play in Leap Paladin. It's a pretty decent 4-drop as well, just to play on turn 4. As I said, 3/6 stat line is very solid for a 4-drop. We've seen a lot of those 4-drops with this stat line succeed past. So yeah, it's pretty decent. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. I think this is just a pretty solid card. Nothing game-breaking, obviously not deck-defining, but just a nice piece for Leap Paladin especially. Alright everybody, and the final card for this video is the card that you see on the left-hand side. The legendary for Druid in this expansion. 6 mana, 5/4, Forest Warden Omwu. Spell Burst, refresh your mana crystals. Holy shit. And the card on the right of that, by the way, guys, is I already rated in one of my early episodes. We can confirm that the name of the card is actually going to be Survival of the Fittest and not Natural Selection, which is what they were translated to in it. So yeah, Survival of the Fittest is going to be the name of that card. But let's focus on the card on the left, guys, because holy shit, this is insane. This is like another Kun, the Forgotten King, for Druid. This opens up so many combo opportunities for a class that loves to play with spells. They already have so many cheap spells to activate this effect. You basically play this on turn 6. You have 4 mana left to play some other stuff that you want. You play this on turn 6. You play a spell, maybe play a 4 mana spell, maybe whatever cost spell, and then it gives you 10 mana again, right? And then you can play. You have another 10 mana to play with. Maybe you do some Malagos combo. Maybe you could just use this as a bit of a tempo swing card, right? Maybe you play this, you play spell, you can play Overflow, get to draw your cards a bit more. I think most Druid decks would love to see this card. Especially if it's going to be some sort of combo Druid. I feel like this can open the door for a lot of possibilities. Maybe if there is a way to now discount your Malagos, which there is with the Dormant minion, or even if you lower the cost of this card with the Dormant minion, it's going to be 1 mana. You can play it alongside a Malagos, then play a 0 mana spell, which obviously Druid has a ton of right now with Innovate and Lightning Bloom. Get 10 mana and just OTK your opponent. I think that's definitely possible, guys, especially with a bit more survivability that Druid is getting as well, with a couple of the minions and the healing. So some sort of OTK Druid deck can definitely exist in the new expansion now for sure. Lightning Bloom is a card that already was printed, and that just gives you 2 mana in a turn for free. Obviously has Overload, but if you're killing an opponent in 1 turn, you don't really care about the Overload. I feel like there's some sort of combo Druid can definitely exist now for sure, and this is an insane card. It's basically Kun the Forgotten King, and it's even better because it's cheaper. That was a 10 mana card. This is a 6 mana card. Wow, this is going to be insane in Druid, I feel like. There is a chance this completely whiffs, and there's not going to be any combo deck in the next expansion. I think that is very unlikely, though. It's just because we've already seen so many cool combo type cards that they've printed already. So, yeah, guys, watch out for this card. Maybe, there needs to be... I mean, there is going to be a bit more disruption in the meta, especially for Demander as well, with stuff like Glide. So, maybe combo decks not going to run completely rampant, and if aggro decks do exist a lot, this obviously will be put in check. But I think the card like Forest Warden Amu, or Omu, I don't know how to pronounce that, does open a lot of doors. So this is a very strong card. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10, because I think it's a really good card. I think you can actually create an archetype that can potentially be in tier 2 or tier 1. Hard to say really, but this is definitely deck defining. Very strong card, 8 out of 10 for me. And that is going to be it for this video. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Only a couple of videos to go now until the full set is revealed. Very excited about that, guys. Hope you guys are excited as well. Stay tuned for more videos on my channel. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more Hearthstone content. But until then, I will see you on my next video.